Jay-Z's team is fighting back against allegations that he raped a 13-year-old at one of P. Diddy's parties. His team has bombarded the courts with motions and possible defenses, now saying the lawsuit should be completely thrown out because this alleged rape doesn't fit within the statute of limitations. Jay-Z's team is also picking apart Jane Doe's filing and recent media interviews, saying her stories just don't add up and the case should be dismissed. We're taking a closer look at the allegations against Jay-Z and what defense his legal team is possibly cooking up with criminal defense attorney Serena Townsend. Let's start with the allegations. They stem from a civil lawsuit filed back in October that listed P. Diddy as a defendant. We're not entirely sure who the plaintiff is, the person filing this lawsuit. She's listed only as Jane Doe, and according to a recent ruling by the case's judge, she can actually remain anonymous as Jane Doe, at least for now. So when Jane Doe filed this lawsuit, she publicly named Sean Combs, who of course is P. Diddy. He was already facing a slew of civil lawsuits at the time, and then there's those federal charges, all surrounding allegations that he was part of a decades-long sex trafficking ring. Jane Doe laid out the details of her assault in her original filing, which we'll get to in a minute. But first, we have to note, at the time she filed this lawsuit, P. Diddy was name-dropped in the suit, but Jay-Z was not. In the first filing, Jane Doe specified she was allegedly raped by another celebrity. She listed them only as Celebrity A. She also listed another person, a woman, as Celebrity B, who apparently watched these assaults. We have some guesses as to who Celebrity B could be, but we can't be 100% sure. We do know, though, who Celebrity A is, and it's apparently Jay-Z. Jane Doe amended her filing late last year to replace Celebrity A with the name Sean Carter, who you probably know as Jay-Z. I know you're multitasking when you're watching our videos, and if you're running errands, listen up. I have something that could be of use to you. It's called Upside, the free app that gets you cash back on daily essentials. I use Upside every time I pump my gas because it's so easy and it's free. Here's all you have to do. Download the Upside app and claim an offer for whatever you're buying. Just pay as usual and follow the steps on the app to get paid. To find out how much you could earn, click the link in the description to download Upside, or scan the QR code on your screen and use our promo code LCNews to get an extra 25 cents back on every gallon on your first tank of gas. So here are her accusations. The assault apparently happened in September of 2000, when Jane Doe was 13 years old and she met Diddy's limo driver outside of the MTV Video Music Awards. The limo driver told her Combs liked younger girls and that she fit what Diddy was looking for, not allowing her into the awards, but inviting her to an after party. This next part is important for a future filing from Jay-Z. Jane Doe claims Diddy's limo driver picked her up and then drove her to a large white house behind a gated fence. Jane Doe says that when she got inside, she was forced to sign a non-disclosure agreement, but she was never given any copies of that paperwork. After she signed the NDA, she went inside and eventually took a drink. It was a reddish-yellow mixture, and she said it tasted like orange juice mixed with cranberry juice and something that was bitter. Jane Doe now believes that Diddy or one of his associates actually slipped something into her drink, because after all this, she started to feel woozy and said she needed to lay down. So she went to a room she thought was empty but didn't lock the door. And soon after, Combs, along with a male and female celebrity, entered the room. Combs aggressively approached plaintiff, that's Jane Doe, with a crazed look in his eyes, grabbed her and said, "You are ready to party." Jane Doe alleges that Jay-Z raped her first, as Diddy and this Celebrity B watched on. After Jay-Z was apparently done, Jane Doe says Diddy raped her, and this time Jay-Z and Celebrity B watched all of this. After this was completed, Jane Doe says she ran from the house to a nearby gas station where her dad came to pick her up. So that's everything that was in the lawsuit, what Jane Doe says happened. But on December 13th, we heard more from her when she appeared in an NBC interview. During all this, there were inconsistencies in Jane Doe's story. She says the night of the assault, she spoke with Good Charlotte singer Benji Madden about his tattoo of the Last Supper because she had a religious background, so it was something to talk about. But according to a filing from Jay-Z, that's not the case. Benji Madden did not attend the VMAs, did not attend the purported after party, and was not even in New York at the time. Instead, he was halfway across the country in the Midwest on tour with his band Good Charlotte. What's more is that Jane Doe's father apparently didn't pick her up after the attack. This is from the Jay-Z motion to quote. He told NBC he was unaware of his daughter's assault allegation until the week he was interviewed. NBC reported that he had no recollection whatsoever of picking up Plaintiff, his daughter, on the night of the VMAs. And Plaintiff and her father were living in Rochester at the time, which would have required her father to drive more than 5 hours from their home to pick her up on the night in question, an event that no father would forget if it actually happened. When pressed by NBC, plaintiff Jane Doe was forced to admit, "I have made some mistakes. I've made a mistake by identifying. Not all the faces there are as clear," and even that she was guessing about key details, including the time it took to reach the venue. What is more, she admits she does not have a single corroborating witness over the last 24 years. So in that motion, Jay-Z's team called out some inconsistencies in Jane Doe's story, but they also called out a few technical issues that they say mean the case should be completely thrown out. So to start, there's the Victims of Gender-Motivated Violence Protection Act. It's also known as the GMV. Jay-Z says there are issues with that act and Jane Doe's timeline. They say it violates his state and federal due process rights. Jay-Z's filing reads in part, quote, "The statute does not have retroactive effect." Plaintiff Jane Doe asserts a violation of the GMV law for conduct that purportedly occurred in September 2000. But the GMV law was not enacted until December 19, 2000, 3 months after the FAC, that's the First Amended Complaint, claims the conduct occurred and cannot apply retroactively to create a cause of action unavailable to plaintiff at the time in question. So basically all that means is the statute of limitations doesn't add up to use the GMV. But there's more. Jay-Z says that even if this GMV law did have that retroactive effect and the timeline didn't matter, the crime had to be committed within New York City. According to the FAC, again, that's the First Amendment complaint, plaintiff was driven from Radio City Music Hall to a large white residence with a gated U-shaped driveway, a drive that took 20 minutes. This is where the alleged assault took place. The FAC's description of the residence in question, however, combined with public records, confirms that any such residence, to the extent it existed at the time, would have been located outside the territorial boundaries of New York City. And if all else fails, Jay-Z's team says Jane Doe's timeline doesn't fit with the statute of limitations. The FAC alleges the conduct occurred 20 plus years ago, well outside the VA's statute of limitations. Though the VA was amended in 2019 to create a 2-year and 6-month revival period, that period expired in August 2021. Let's dig a little bit deeper into Jay-Z's possible defense in all this. For that, we're going to bring in criminal defense attorney Serena Townsend. And Serena, to start, what is Jay-Z's team doing from the jump when they get news of this lawsuit?
Well, it seems like they're taking a very proactive approach. I think that perhaps they went a little too aggressive. It seems like they really upset the judge with their tons of motion writing and kind of hitting below the belt, not to the extent of name calling, but getting kind of close to being aggressive against the actual attorney rather than fighting the case on the merits.
The judge did kind of clap back, snap back, whatever the kids are saying these days. She said that they were filing a litany of motions, which I thought was really interesting. And you pointed it out too. I'm wondering if that's because it's like a tactic they're trying to use in the case. Why might that be?
Yeah, so it's interesting. Most cases slug along and we don't really hear about any of it, right? We just, it goes by practice and protocol and procedure, and there's motion writing here and there, but it's usually not the quote unquote litany of motions that we're seeing here. I think it's a bit performative. I wonder if Alex Spiro and his team are just kind of doing this because maybe they think it's going to placate Jay-Z. Maybe their clients are kind of jumping down their throats and saying, well, we want an aggressive attorney. That's why we hired you. It's very important to remember that good lawyering doesn't necessarily mean doing this. There's deadlines, there's timelines. Being this aggressive, there has to be a little bit of suave to your practice, especially if you don't want to piss off the very judge who's going to be making those decisions.
You're right to say it's been really aggressive. Last week, we were talking about the motion of Jane Doe to have her identity revealed, and the judge was like, no, that was the filing where she got kind of spicy. And now the latest filing is Jay-Z's team is attacking the victims of the Gender Motivated Violence Protection Act. Huge words, but basically what it means is that went into effect in December of 2000. And Jane Doe says that this alleged rape happened in September of 2000. So Jay-Z's team is like, hey, the timeline doesn't match. What do you make of all of that? Is that at least a good argument?
Yeah. So, a good attorney is going to try to argue on the facts of their case, but also try to argue these, what we sometimes call technicalities. I don't want to minimize it. A technicality is a very real thing at times where there's rules and laws and what applies and what doesn't apply. And if the law didn't come into effect until after the events in question, it is a decent argument to say that it does not apply. And so I think the tactic, aside from the aggressiveness, is look, we're not just going to attack the story itself. We're not just going to say he's factually innocent. We're also going to say that certain things that you're trying to apply to hold against my client don't actually apply. It's very important for a lawyer to fight on all different levels like this, on the technicalities, on the law, and on the story itself.
I'm wondering if this next part is a technicality too. They were saying that in order to use this specific law, the incident has to happen within the borders of New York City. And apparently, according to her lawsuit, it was at this big white house. It was behind a gated fence. And Jay-Z's team says there's no such place in New York City. Do you think that them pointing that out works in their favor too?
I do. So, look, anytime you accuse somebody of anything, whether it's in a civil suit or a criminal suit, you have to put your money where your mouth is. You have to be able to literally prove every element of the case, including jurisdiction. A lot of people forget about jurisdiction because usually that's a given, right? Like if something happened in New York, obviously it's a New York jurisdiction. But here, if you're not able to articulate the exact date, location, time, things like that, those specific elements, then it's another good argument that you don't have jurisdiction without establishing it. If she can't say the address is definitely in New York, there's a problem there for sure.
So Jay-Z's team has two pretty strong things going for them there. And the next part is pretty strong, I'm thinking too, in the fact that Jane Doe laid out all of her accusations in this filing. And then recently she did an interview with NBC and there were some inconsistencies about things. For instance, she said she met Benji Madden that night and he wasn't even in New York at the time. She said her dad picked her up and her dad's like, I never have even heard of this. Those things, the inconsistencies in her story, is that tough for her to combat?
Yes, I see. Both of us are cringing at this. And the main reason I'm cringing is because I'm a former prosecutor myself. And the golden rule is do not make statements in public or really anywhere. Don't write anything down about the case because it could absolutely be used against you. And any good defense attorney is going to use that inconsistency against her. It can be used in several areas leading up to and certainly during a trial, if a trial even happens, if we even could get there at this point. Those inconsistencies are deadly, especially something like this, because you have her own father who has no stake in the game, aside from probably wanting to support his own daughter, saying, actually, that's not how I remember things happening. It is a major hit on her credibility, her memory, and her potential honesty in this case.
Not to say that what Jane Doe is going through didn't happen. I mean, obviously this happened way back in 2000. That's tough going into your memory bank and it's trauma. So not to put that aside, but basically what you just laid out, the facts that those two stories don't match up, I know that makes it tough. But is that something that her team would bring forward? Tony Busby is representing her. Do you think he would talk about the fact that this is a traumatic incident and that may be why her memory of it is a bit clouded?
100%. And we see that a lot in victims of trauma, specifically sexual trauma. Absolutely, that happens. And it's going to be on him essentially to not only cure all of that bad credibility, but also probably he's going to want to hire an expert who is an expert in this field of sexual trauma, who can testify separate from her that these are things that we see in people, especially as time goes on. The issue, though, is even, and it's very unfortunate for victims of trauma because we see this happen in trials a lot, which is there is an explanation for, the cloudy memory. There is an explanation a lot of times, even if it did happen, for the inability to give those details. But the bottom line is a jury has to be able to trust the person and the details. And so if the details aren't coming or they're contradicted, then even if it did happen, it's unfortunately a very big blow to her and her case. So that's going to have to play out. We'll have to see how that works, whether a jury is going to be okay with that or not.
Since Jane Doe's initial filing, we have learned more information. I mean, from that interview, of course, and then the fact that she amended her filing. So to start, the person who we now know as Sean Carter, Jay-Z, was listed as Celebrity A. We don't know their name. And then in December, she comes out and puts his name in it and attaches him to this allegation that he raped her when she was 13 years old. Why do you think that is, that she had the change of heart? At first, he's just Celebrity A, this random celebrity, and now it's Sean Carter, Jay-Z.
I'm not sure why that happened, to be honest with you. It's possible that at first she was scared to name him. I mean, as you can see, she's not at this point being named. And it's, possible that that was a tactic taken, like, all right, I'm not going to name him this way, maybe I won't be named. And it is a very scary thing for an accuser to be named, especially when it's against somebody who's very famous. Perhaps now that kind of everything has come out, I'm sure she still has that fear, but it's less of a strategy because it's already out there anyway. And so you might as well kind of attach a name to the filing at this point.
Talking about Jane Doe keeping her name quiet, that's something that Jay-Z's team was calling for. They said, we want to know who this person is, filing the motion. And the judge said, no, at least not for now. So you're Jane Doe for now, but I could change my mind. Do you think the judge will change her mind, that eventually we will learn Jane Doe's real identity?
I do think so. There's a very sensitive balance that a judge has to take in this kind of case in particular. Like I said, the sensitivity of a sex crime happening versus, a celebrity. So there's all sorts of possible ways that she could be targeted, either blackmailed or in physical danger. So you must protect somebody in that situation. However, on balance, a person has the right to know who their accuser is. There's a confrontation clause. You have the right to confront your accuser. You have the right to cross-examine your accuser. You have a right to defend yourself. And so there is this balance that we have in the law of protecting sexual assault victims, but also allowing people who are accused to know who their accuser is so that they could defend themselves. So therefore, I think the judge made the right call here and saying, look, for now, there's no immediate need to identify her, and let's keep protecting her. But at some point, if you're going to make that accusation, you're going to have to be named and known so that he has the right to defend himself against you.
I mean, that part makes sense to me, because how could Jay-Z's team prepare if they don't 100% know who this person is? Like you said, if they could cross-examine her and they're not sure which person she may be, he may not even remember her. I know that that is really important. Do you think that right now, the interim, when we still don't know Jane Doe's name, is that a hit for the defense that they can't prepare specifics?
Yeah, look, it's when you have either depositions or a trial or really any defense to prepare for, there is a ton of work that goes on behind the scenes. We may see sound bites, we may see quotes in the media or in newspapers, but there is oftentimes not just one, but a team of people really trying very hard, working very hard to prepare a defense. And it takes a lot to do that, especially knowing who your accuser is. Look, imagine she didn't make that statement about the Maddens and speaking to them on such and such date. Then how would the defense have known, like, hey, now this Benji Madden fella could be one of our witnesses, and, reach out to him and prepare him for his testimony. There's a whole bunch of people that they may want to contact, a whole bunch of, prep work that they have to do to defend themselves. But without knowing the who and the what and the where and the when, it's almost impossible to do that. At some point, the judge is going to have to throw them a bone and give her identity to them.
We've been talking a lot about the Jay-Z side of things in this lawsuit, but we have to remember the first person listed was P. Diddy. And it's honestly hard to keep track of how many civil lawsuits he has against him at this point. I mean, there's quite a few accusations against him, but just this one for Jay-Z. And I'm wondering if it's possible more suits could be filed against Jay-Z now that his name is out there and Jane Doe kind of broke the ice.
We see this happen a lot. Even at some point, there was only one against P. Diddy, right? There's always only one at some point. A lot of times this happens. And again, it cuts both ways, right? You have people saying, well, wow, she's so brave. And this happened to me too, but I didn't think I could, have the bravery to come out. But now that she's come out, I feel supported. I feel like maybe there's an opportunity for me to get justice too. And you may see other honest accusers come out. On the other hand, critics of this would say, well, maybe it's just a money grab. Somebody is seeing that she's getting the attention and the potential for, restitution of some sort. Now, all these people are going to line up, even if it was consensual, even if it never happened, and just kind of scare him into paying them off. So this is why the law is so interesting. It's why these trials end up being so interesting, because only when you're in the courtroom, finally, are you able to really test the credibility of an accuser and the credibility of the accused. So it will have to play out, but I would not be surprised if we did see additional lawsuits coming.
As you said, we don't know all of the details yet. That would happen when it would come to trial. So we're still kind of wondering, a lot of question marks. But from what we do know right now, how do you feel? Do you think one side has a stronger argument than the other, or what do you see for the future of this specific case?
Right now, I kind of feel like the defense has the upper hand because of the inconsistencies in her statement. The bottom line is you're going to be able to do a lot of things with a case, no matter what side you're on. You're going to have a lot of corroborative evidence to support, maybe a prosecution or a lawsuit. And you're going to have people who you can get to come in and say, no, this couldn't have happened because of X, Y, and Z. But the central issue in this kind of case is the woman herself. Is she credible? Is she honest? And the fact that, there's muddied kind of testimony already and possible credibility issues with her own father and somebody, again, Benji Madden, who really doesn't have a stake in the game, saying like, actually, this could not have happened at that time. It's already causing a dent in her credibility. So I think just right now, if I were to tip the scales, I do think the defense has a better case at this very moment in time.
I'm interested to see where this case goes. Serena Townsend, as always, a pleasure. Thank you for coming on with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Just to be extra clear, Jay-Z has denied all of the claims from Jane Doe, and he's not charged criminally for any of these allegations. Reporting for Law&Crime, I'm Sierra Gillespie.